from the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
In this holy season, we prepare to celebrate the birth of the Prince of Peace. We have come to the U.S. Institute of Peace to sign a historic agreement that will end one of the longest-running conflicts anywhere in the world, with far more than 10 million people killed. Today, we commit to stopping decades of violence and bloodshed and to begin a new era of harmony and cooperation between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda.
That was President Donald Trump earlier today at the U.S. Institute of Peace announcing a major peace deal between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Welcome to this December 4th edition of Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Thanks so much for tuning in. Well, coming up, strong reactions on Capitol Hill after lawmakers reviewed video of a U.S. strike on a cartel-linked drug boat off of Venezuela. Republicans say the mission was legal, justified, and part of President Trump's tougher stand against deadly cartels flooding our country with deadly drugs. Texas Congressman Keith Self, a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, will join us to break it all down. Plus, with the 2026 midterm elections just 11 months away, several states are redrawing congressional maps, and Republican retirements are outpacing Democrats. These moves could shape who controls Congress after next November. Ken Blackwell, FRC Action's Special Advisor for Election Integrity and Senior Fellow for Human Rights and Constitutional Governance, will give us his analysis and what to watch as the election cycle accelerates. Well, President Trump is showcasing another high-profile diplomatic breakthrough today, this time bringing the leaders of the Republic of the Congo and Rwanda to Washington to sign a U.S.-brokered peace and economic agreement. However, fighting is still underway back home, raising questions about how much impact this deal will ultimately have. Joining me now is Washington Stand reporter Casey Harper, who has been tracking today's stories. Casey, you've been following this one pretty closely. What's in the deal and kind of what's happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, Tony. So President Trump, he brought the presidents of Congo and Rwanda to Washington, D.C. to sign the U.S. deal in question. Now, it's a major step to stabilize the region and, very importantly, counter China's control of critical minerals in Africa. Those minerals can be used for a lot of important things, including AI development. Now, the agreement, it renews a June ceasefire, it strengthens security cooperation, and importantly, it opens new pathways for U.S. investment.
Millions and millions of people have been tragically killed, went on forever, and countless more have been displaced from their homes. Families have been destroyed. It's been a disaster. Many administrations have tried, but probably not too hard, knowing who preceded me. But they tried. And today we're succeeding where so many others have failed.
President never misses an opportunity to take a shot at his predecessor, but no doubt this is a big win here. It brought back some longtime rivals to the table after years of bloodshed that's honestly left millions of people dead. Trump called the deal something no previous administration could deliver, and the fighting between these groups, the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels, and Congo's army is admittedly still ongoing, which highlights just how difficult peace will be without real follow-through, Tony.
Yeah, it is interesting to see, the president stepping into areas where other administrations didn't. And I think in part it's because he thinks differently. And sometimes, and most of the time, that's good. That's actually good. All right, you've been monitoring a significant court ruling on federal funding of abortion here at home. And that one is now halted part of President Trump's policy that was passed by Congress before the August break. Bring us up to speed on that one.
That's right, Tony. This is a big story. So a federal judge in Boston, an Obama appointee, has temporarily blocked part of President Trump's major tax and policy bill, which aimed to stop Medicaid dollars from going to Planned Parenthood and other clinics that perform abortions. But 22 Democrat-led states sued to block that provision in the bill. They argue the law is too vague or unfair, and in this case, the judge agreed, calling the provision impermissibly ambiguous. Now, the ruling pauses the policy just for now even though the administration argues taxpayer money shouldn't support organizations tied to abortion. Planned Parenthood, of course, is celebrating the decision, but the judge did put her order on hold for 7 days, giving the Trump administration time to appeal and continue its efforts to ensure Medicaid dollars are aligned with pro-life priorities, at least for 1 year, Tony.
Yeah, this isn't the first court challenge to that provision. We'll see how this one works its way out. But the issue of taxpayer funding of abortion is likely to be a topic on Capitol Hill next week, as there will be a push by Democrats to extend the Obamacare COVID-era subsidies that expire at the end of the year. Now, I spoke with Senator John Cornyn of Texas earlier today, and he said, first, it's unlikely that any Republican will support the extensions of the subsidies, but without the Hyde protections barring funding for abortion, which the Obamacare currently funds, there'll be no support from Republicans. Casey, on another topic, Americans are tuning out, the news more than ever, especially Republicans. So what's driving the drop, and where are these people turning to instead?
Yeah, so a new Pew study, the one you're referencing, it shows Americans, they're turning out traditional news at much higher rates, and it's especially steep among Republicans. So let's get into the numbers. Only 36% of adults say they closely follow the news, which is down more than half since 2016. Younger Americans are the least engaged, but every age group is seeing a decline. Republicans in particular report a 21-point plunge in regular news consumption, which shows that deep frustration and low trust in major media outlets, which have dropped the ball on a lot of big stories. But Democrats have also dropped, but by far less. And while many Americans now stumble into political headlines through social media and just scrolling their phones, they're not seeking them out, and the appetite for legacy media continues to fall, Tony.
Well, thanks, Casey. That's, of course, why programs like Washington Watch are here, a biblical view of the news. We come at it from a biblical worldview. And this stands in sharp contrast to the mainstream press, offering audiences kind of an alternative that they feel that they can trust. Casey, thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you a little bit later in the program. All right, with all that the U.S. has been engaged with this week on the international front, I want to bring in a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee to provide insight into some of this week's major developments. Joining me now, Congressman Keith Self of Texas. He serves on several House committees, including the Foreign Affairs Committee. He also served our country for 25 years in the United States Army before retiring with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Self, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here with you, Tony. Thank you.
So let me start with big news this week. Everybody talking about the Venezuela attacks on the narco-terrorist boats. Rear Admiral that was Brady in charge of those operations was on Capitol Hill this week, Capitol Hill today, rather, giving a classified briefing. What do we know?
Well, I have not seen the video, but the reports focus on the video because this is the transparency of the Trump administration. Now, the military command, to include a legal advisor, and we need to make sure that people understand the legal advisor was there, decided that that second strike that is causing so much consternation amongst the Democrats was indeed legal. The survivors may have been trying to save drugs. They may have been trying to communicate with other drug boats. But what I want to say, Tony, is I think the Senate needs to stop whining about this, stop complaining, and let's figure out how we can help Donald Trump stop the drugs that are killing 300 plus people every day. If an airliner went down every day, about the 3rd day, the American people would be up in arms. Now, if the Senate wants to do something, why don't they put an AUMF on the floor, the authorization for the use of military force, and let's go after the drug cartels. Actually, in the last Congress, Chairman McCall of the House Foreign Affairs Committee was working on that AUMF. So let's do something to help stop the drugs that are killing Americans here in our homeland.
You mentioned something that I think most Americans are not aware of. In today's environment, especially when we go back to what was happening in Afghanistan with drone attacks, there are legal advisors standing next to most of the military operators giving them advice to helping them navigate what's legal and what is not.
Absolutely. When I was in the Pentagon, the 3 stars and the 4 stars said, I don't sign a single piece of paper that the legal advisor has not looked at first. So that is absolutely true in today's litigious society. So make no mistake about it, they've had a legal advisor comment and approve legally these actions.
Congressman Self, I want to switch gears a little bit to going back to the Middle East. You served alongside the Israeli Defense Forces there in Israel during your time in the military. Today, actually, it was yesterday, diplomats from Israel, Lebanon, with the assistance of the United States, engaged in diplomatic discussions, and it looks like we're having some normalizations of relationships between Israel and Lebanon. That's a pretty significant breakthrough and could be a force for stabilization in that region.
Well, we need to have this stabilization because Hezbollah is very clear. They're rearming to include in Lebanon. And if you remember what we used to say about Hezbollah before the latest Israeli decimation of them, was Hezbollah was the A team. Hamas was only the B team. Hamas gets far more of the attention today, but Hezbollah was the A team. So if Hezbollah rearms in Lebanon, we have a dramatic situation developing there. So I'm delighted. I am delighted with this meeting that they've had, and I hope that it continues, because the Lebanese government for so many years was considered a failed state, Tony. Let's just be honest. So if we are helping broker between the Israelis and the Lebanese, let's make sure we continue to do that. That is a big event.
In the history there, there's a long history in Lebanon of the Christian presence. In fact, if you go back to the Old Testament, there was a strong alliance between King David and Hiram, the king of Tyre, which is modern-day Lebanon. So this is a really good development, and it speaks again to, I think, the Trump administration thinking outside the box, not thinking about what we can't do, but let's try to see what we can accomplish.
And if they can accomplish that, if we can have a true alliance between the government of Lebanon and the government of Israel, that would put Hezbollah on the outside, and that would be a fabulous outcome, Tony.
So let me jump to another part of the world. We got about a minute left. Ukraine, Russia. What do you see happening there?
Well, they haven't come to any agreements, but they continue to meet. Putin continues to drag this out. But I will tell you, I think that Putin holds the cards here because I don't think he sees any reason to stop. So he will drag it out. He will continue to meet. He will continue to talk. But we have got to stop the oil sales that are funding the Putin war machine. He was just in India talking to them because India and China are the 2 big countries that are basically funding the war in Ukraine for Russia. Right. We need to have stronger sanctions.
Not to mention even a number of the European countries, the NATO countries that are buying that Russian oil. Congressman Keith Self, always great to have you on the program. Thanks for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. There's some good things happening. I do like the fact that the Trump administration thinks outside the box. They think about what's possible, not what is impossible. It really is a difference in how you approach things. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about 3 bills which passed the House this week, which deter foreign adversaries. Don't go away. More straight ahead.
Hello, I'm Tony Perkins, and I want to invite you to join me for Stand on the Word, a daily journey through the Bible, 10 to 15 minutes a day. That's all it takes. And in no time, you'll have finished the entire Bible. And along the way, we'll learn how to apply God's truths to the world in which we live. As we're about to start a new year and as our nation is about to celebrate 250 years, there's never been a better time for a fresh start in the Word of God. To join us, text Bible to 67742. That's Bible to 67742.
Should a Christian support Israel? That question has become one of the most emotionally charged issues of our time, both in the world and within the church. Family Research Council President Tony Perkins offers a clear, biblical, and prophetic answer. In his latest book, he examines Israel's past, present, and future through the lens of Scripture. revealing why support for Israel is not rooted in politics, partisanship, or cultural sentiment, but in the unchanging promises of God. Drawing from Genesis to Revelation, Tony Perkins demonstrates that the ultimate rationale for a Christian support for Israel is spiritual. Should a Christian support Israel invites believers to see beyond headlines and ideologies, returning to the foundation of God's Word to understand His heart for His chosen people and the blessings that flow when we stand with what He has established forever. Text the word Israel to 67742 for more information.
What is God's role in government? What does the separation of church and state really mean? And how does morality shape a nation? President John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Join Family Research Council for God and Government, a powerful series that explores the connection between biblical principles and the American government, equipping you with truth to engage in today's most pressing debates. We'll uncover the foundations of our nation's history and why it's relevant for today. Join us to defend God's plan for government, because faith and freedom were never meant to be separate. You can view the course at prayvotestand.org/God and Government or on the Stand Firm app.
Are you looking for a meaningful gift to share this Christmas? Family Research Council has you covered. Check out the Stand on the Word official store for gear and gifts that are thoughtfully designed to help you wear, share, and stand boldly on Scripture. Check out our Christmas bundle for a $25 discount. Visit frc.org/Bible store or text STORE to 67742. That's STORE to 67742.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for tuning in. All right, as we approach our nation's 250th anniversary, I want to encourage you to support the work of Family Research Council in protecting the principles of America that America was founded on. And through December 31st, your gift to FRC will be doubled thanks to a special challenge match, making twice the impact. So to take advantage of this limited time offer, give us a call. We've got folks standing by to take your phone call. 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008. We here at the Family Research Council at Washington Watch, we receive no government money. We are totally funded by folks like you across this country that want news and information from a biblical perspective from the newsmakers themselves. So give us a call, 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008. All right, this week, the U.S. House of Representatives passed 3 bills to deter foreign adversaries, including the Chinese Communist Party, from influencing our nation's K-12 schools. In a statement, House Speaker Mike Johnson said the passage of the bills are victories for America's parents, students, education system, and our national security. And my next guest says the bills will protect American students from CCP propaganda while shining light on how China tries to influence our education system. With me now to discuss this from the congressional perspective is Congressman John Moolenaar. He is the chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Michigan. Chairman, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tony. Good to be with you again.
And congratulations on these wins. I know that this has been long, hard fought, bringing visibility to the threat that the Chinese Communist Party poses, and it begins with our children. Talk a little bit about these bills and what they do.
Well, just in summary, what these bills do is protect our children. They empower parents by making sure that school districts are accountable to parents, responding to requests for information. And it really gets to the heart of this issue of the Chinese Communist Party wanting to influence Americans' thoughts about China. And when we consider, Confucius Institutes, when we consider the massive public relations campaign Chinese Communist Party does in America, we don't want that infiltration in our schools. And so these bills require transparency. They require schools to report if they're receiving funds from foreign governments, and they disallow any funding from the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government, and promote transparency and reporting requirements. So I think it's a victory that says we want to protect our kids, we want to empower parents, and we want to make sure that kids have access to accurate information, not Chinese propaganda.
So, Chairman Moulinier, let me ask you this question, probably on the minds of many people. Why would K through 12 schools be taking money from the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party is very clever. They have a united front operation that basically tries to tie cultural ties and cultural information about China, and does this throughout the United States. But what they also do is put Chinese propaganda into those cultural ties. And so when it comes to different institutes that say, well, we just want to teach Mandarin language or teach about Chinese history, it's very much influenced by Xi Jinping thought, by communist ideology that denies what happened at Tiananmen Square, or doesn't talk about the travesty that has happened in China by the Chinese Communist Party oppressing its own people, doesn't talk about what's happened in Hong Kong and Jimmy Lai being in prison for speaking out on freedom. So it presides over a one-sided view of China, a favorable view, without really acknowledging the threats imposed by the Chinese Communist Party.
So this is a part of their strategy. I mean, just like the Belt and Roads initiatives that they're pushing around the world to really lock in foreign countries to kind of their ideology. This is actually taking it. And I think what is so dangerous about this is that not only is it infiltrating our educational system, but it's indoctrinating children, because these are going to be future leaders. I mean, we saw some of the exchange programs. This was an issue in the last election with Tim Walz and having gone to China and spent time over there. This is about influencing America and its future.
It absolutely is. And with technology and with the influence that China has through technology, whether it's TikTok or other means, they've become even more aggressive, more capable of influencing people in this direction. And, what seems like harmless information, what seems like very friendly sounding names, is underneath of that is Chinese Communist Party ideology that denies basic freedoms and that promotes a deceptive view of the world. And that's something we want to protect our children from. And to your point about the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we are blessed and endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, and the government's job is to secure those rights. The difference in China is that the people don't have rights. It's simply what the government tells them to do. And if they don't do what the Chinese Communist Party says, they are in violation of national security laws and run the risk of imprisonment or worse.
Well, and they're tracking everything they do. They're monitoring them. They're using surveillance to do that. We just have about a minute left, Chairman Moulinier. I want to ask you this question. For the average person out there, what should they be looking for if they see something in their school that might suggest that that there is this infiltration, this effort to influence?
Well, first, parents need to notice it. They need to then request information about the curriculum that is being taught. They want to ask questions about who is funding this program, because those are all relevant questions. And under this legislation, schools will be required to participate in that. And for school administrators, there are ways to teach foreign languages without putting yourself in a submissive role to the Chinese Communist Party. So that's where the awareness for parents as well as administrators comes in.
All right, Chairman Moulinier, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us, and appreciate the work you do keeping an eye on the Chinese Communist Party.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right, coming up, we'll discuss the latest on the redistricting fights that's taking place across the country. Ken Blackwell joins us next to talk about how this might affect the midterm elections. So don't go away. For over 4,000 years, the Jewish people have had legal, historical, and biblical ties to the land of Israel, especially the heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria, which much of the world still calls the West Bank. To Israelis, Judea and Samaria is far more than a name. It's the center of their ancestral homeland where nearly 80% of the Bible's events took place. Abraham purchased property in Hebron, Jacob in Shechem. Joshua made an altar on Mount Ebal and led the Israelites into a covenant before God. On Mount Gerizim, overlooking Shechem, Jesus talked to the Samaritan woman at the well about worshiping neither on Mount Gerizim nor in Jerusalem, but in spirit and in truth. Judea and Samaria is nearly a quarter of Israel's current landmass, not a small strip of land on the Jordan River, but a vital and strategic part of the nation's identity. The October 7th massacre, launched from Gaza, shattered the illusion that giving away territory brings peace. Gaza, which was once seen as the cornerstone of a two-state solution, became a launchpad for terror. Today, only 21% of Israelis support a Palestinian state. Trust in a two-state solution has all but collapsed. The Middle East is changing. Iran's grip is weakening, new alliances are forming, but Western countries and some U.S. officials still chase the mirage of a two-state solution. History speaks clearly. The 2005 Gaza withdrawal, backed by the U.S., led not to peace, but to a terrorist regime. Judea and Samaria are 24 times larger than Gaza, deeply woven into Israel's geographic and spiritual fabric. To surrender them would not bring peace. It would invite conflict and existential danger. Family Research Council stands with Israel's rightful claim to sovereignty. It's time for America to do the same, for history, for justice, and for lasting security in the Middle East. Perkins, your host. Excuse me. The website is TonyPerkins.com. All right, as I mentioned, we have a challenge match that will double anything that you give between now and December 31st. We're here because of you, and we can only be here because of you because we are funded totally by listeners like you across the country. So we have team members standing by to take your call, 800-225-4008, if you'd like to partner with us and make sure that Washington Watch continues. All right, we are about 11 months away from the 2026 midterm elections, and ahead of that, a growing number of states have taken steps to redraw their congressional maps in ways that could determine control of Congress. Also ahead of these midterms, there have been a significant number of congressional resignations announced, retirements announced, with Republican retirements currently outpacing Democrats. With all that's going on, what might the midterm landscape look like? Joining me now to talk about this, Ken Blackwell, Special Advisor for Election Integrity at FRC Action. Ken has worn many hats over the years, and among them, he was co-chair of the U.S. Census Monitoring Board. Ken, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Tony, it's always good to be with you.
All right, so we have several states. Several of them are being challenged in the courts. We don't know what it's finally going to look like, but bring us up to speed. Where do we stand with these redistricting efforts?
Well, you have 7 to 9 states that have been flirting with changing and redrawing their congressional districts. California did it through a referendum that allowed them to would allow them to change or redraw the district lines. That's going to be challenged, I'm sure, in court. Texas has done it, and California was a counterpunch to Texas. I think, Tony, this is the challenge. One, the Republicans have a slim majority right now. Historically, the party that's in the White House has a challenge in the off-year election. That means that the burden is going to be on Speaker Johnson and the Republicans to hold the line. When it's all said and done, I think the courts will probably balance it out where there might be an uptick of 2 or 3 seat advantage in the redrawn lines. But the fact of the matter is that Republicans are still swimming upstream. I think what's going to be interesting in the next couple of weeks is when the Supreme Court makes a decision on whether or not we are locked in a moment in history that was established in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act, particularly Section 2, which said that you could go out and create majority-minority districts to protect minority voters, in this case, African-American voters. The reality is that with the mobility and the upward mobility economically of Blacks, there is no way that I think the Supreme Court is going to lock us into a 1965 model, which would then mean that a lot of the redistricting will act in 2026 and perhaps in 2028 give us a different playing field.
So the states, though, could just actually be kind of working in advance of a court decision, because based upon what the court has done on other race-related cases, it's most likely, as you said, they're not going to put us back to a 1965 case. But you've got Florida, Indiana, Virginia are taking steps to redraw lines. You've got Nebraska, Kansas, Illinois. You've got Maryland. Of course, the big two are California and Texas, and there's litigation surrounding those. As you pointed out, the Cook report basically said if everybody wins, Democrats win, Republicans win, it still gives the Republicans about a 2 to 3 seat advantage in this election cycle.
Yeah, and we're again swimming against the normal situation in history where people use the off-year election as a way to hold the White House, the person and the party that controls the White House in check. But you know what? I think that the president has brought us out of such a deep economic hole that in the final analysis in 2026, you're going to see a lean towards the Republicans as being the uplift from economic malaise that the administration put us in.
I was speaking with House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier today. We were talking about the Tennessee special election that took place this week. Of course, the media is spinning, Trump won that district by 22 points, and the victor only won by 9 points over his opponent. But the reality, that's only a R10 district. Trump outperformed the Republican numbers in that district. And turnout was higher than anticipated. In fact, it was pretty high. So his point is that the Republicans actually have a lot of momentum. There's a lot of enthusiasm, and turnout is what's going to determine these elections.
That's absolutely right. Turnout and election integrity. That means that anybody who needs to be a poll worker or a poll watcher. We need to be engaged at the precinct level, and that sort of engagement brings about a transparency that, in fact, will give us an even playing field. On an even playing field, I think the Republicans, Mike Johnson, will come out ahead.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot on the election integrity front, and I just hope people don't become complacent, because the gains that we made in this last cycle by making sure every ballot was counted and only counted once, we can't slip back. We've got to continue to hold that standard. Ken Blackwell, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, coming up, our panel from the Washington stand will dig deeper into some of the headlines from the week.
At Family Research Council, we believe religious freedom is a fundamental human right that all governments must protect. For years, Islamist militants in Nigeria have targeted Christians and other religious minority groups with brutal violence. Since 2009, 52,000 Christians have been slaughtered. A staggering 89% of Christian martyrs in the world today are from Nigeria. The first Trump administration declared Nigeria a country of particular concern, a designation reserved for countries whose governments engage in or tolerate religious freedom violations. However, this designation of Nigeria was quickly reversed by the Biden administration. Following consistent calls from FRC President Tony Perkins and other religious leaders across the U.S., President Donald Trump has responded.
Christianity is facing an existential threat in Nigeria. Thousands and thousands of Christians are being killed. I am hereby making Nigeria a country of particular concern.
This is a huge step forward for the protection of Christians in Nigeria, as well as religious freedom across the world. While this opens the door for the U.S. government to pressure Nigerian leaders to protect vulnerable Christians, it is only the beginning. We must continue to pray diligently, work strategically, and stand firm for the protection of religious liberty across the globe.
In times like these, we need something solid to stand on. That's why I'm inviting you to join me on January the 1st for Stand on the Word, a daily journey through the entire Bible. Each day, we'll read God's Word together, discuss how to apply His truths to our lives. 15 minutes that can transform your year. Join me and thousands of others as we stand strong by standing on the Word of God. Text Bible to 67742. That's Bible to 67742.
How should Christians think about the thorny issues shaping our culture? How should Christians address deceitful ideas like transgenderism, critical theory, or assisted suicide? How can Christians navigate raising children in a broken culture, the war on gender roles, or rebuilding our once great nation? Outstanding is a podcast from the Washington Stand dedicated to these critical conversations. Outstanding seeks to tear down what our corrupt culture lifts up with an aim to take every thought and every idea captive to the obedience of Christ. Whether policies or partisan politics, whether conflict in America or conflict abroad, join us and our guests as we examine the headlines through the lens of Scripture and explore how Christians can faithfully exalt Christ in all of life. Follow Outstanding on your favorite podcast app and look for new episodes each week.
Merry Christmas and welcome back to Washington Watch. All right, as I mentioned earlier in the program, we have team members that this week are manning the phones because we have a challenge match which will double the gifts that you make to Family Research Council between now and the end of the year. So this is a time that you can stand with Washington Watch and Family Research Council. Give us a call, 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008. Our word for today comes from Hebrews chapter 12, continuing the powerful faith narrative introduced in chapter 11. Therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. The heroes of the faith, those who endured the trials and triumphs recorded in the previous chapter, are pictured as spectators in the stands, watching us run the race God has assigned to us. Verse 1 gives us clear instructions for how to run faithfully. Lay aside every weight that slows us down. Cast off the sin that so easily ensnares us, especially the sin of unbelief. Run with endurance, remembering this is a lifelong race. It's not a sprint. Looking, verse 2 says, unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. When we grow weary, we lift our eyes to Jesus, who endured the cross and now reigns at the Father's right hand. Verse 3 says these verses remind us to consider his endurance so that we do not become discouraged. And unlike Jesus, we have not yet resisted to the point of bloodshed in our struggle against sin. So to find out more about our journey through the Bible, text Bible to 67742. That's Bible to 67742. And I invite you to join us as we begin a new journey in January. As we journey through the Bible, text me, Bible to 67742, Bible to 67742, and you can join us on this journey. Well, as we often do on Thursdays, we want to take a look back at some of the news that the headlines from this week to discuss them with our panel of reporters from the Washington Stand. With me now for that conversation, managing editor for broadcast, Casey Harper, and editorial director and senior writer, Suzanne Bowdy. Casey, Suzanne, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, let's start first with the news that just broke a few hours ago. There was a trilateral meeting today that President Trump had with the leaders of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Suzanne, what's the significance of this?
Well, I think the world has largely been focused on the peace negotiations in Israel and Russia, Ukraine, those two wars that have consumed a lot of the world's attention. But honestly, what happened today is one of the most significant peace deals, I think, of this entire generation. These are two countries that have been engaged in a 30-year war that's cost over 6 million lives. Those are Holocaust-like numbers. And the fact that President Trump was able to bring together these two countries and sit down and agree to disarm, agree to a ceasefire, agree to return some of these millions of displaced people back to their homelands, and maybe even do some economic partnership between the two nations is hugely significant and hopefully will ripple throughout Africa. These are actually atrocities that compare a lot with what we're seeing in Nigeria and Sudan over these past few years, especially as the civil war has grown and exploded in the Congo. I mean, we're talking about looting, beheadings, execution, arson, rape, 10,000 rapes in a 2-month span against girls as young as 10. These atrocities have been savage, they've been brutal, and the fact that Trump brought these two nations to the table is a credit to him and hopefully will really spread throughout the continent of Africa, which is descending into chaos as we speak.
He's already stepped in earlier declaring Nigeria as a country of particular concern because of what was happening there as it pertained to the killing of Christians. The fighting still continues between these two countries. Is there an expectation that that's going to take some time to stop, or what do we see unfolding here?
I think so. Just last month, we saw a brutal attack in a hospital maternity ward that actually killed mothers and their newborns, pregnant women, nurses, doctors. This is going to take vigilance on the part not only of these two countries who've been at war for so long, but also the international community. If you look across Africa right now, the continent has about a 4,000-mile, what they're calling corridor of conflict. 16 of the 54 states in Africa are embroiled in some sort of war right now. Right. Imagine if 16 of the United States were involved in a war. So we're really talking about a region that needs the world's attention, needs someone like Donald Trump to come in and actually broker peace talks so that innocent lives are saved.
Well, I think, we often kind of project our situation onto those that we're thinking about it. We're thinking about the United States, where there is, we question this sometimes, but there's law and order. And there's more of an infrastructure and stability. You go to some of these countries, which I've been to, and it's a free-for-all. I mean, it's just totally chaotic. And the central government just doesn't have a lot of control. And Nigeria is something in that category where the Nigerian government does not have the ability at present to stop, or they could do more than they're doing. But you've got Boko Haram is the one that's killing a lot of the Christians there in Nigeria, and they're better equipped than the government. So these countries need someone to come along and cheer them on to do the right thing, and I think President Trump in part is doing that. So again, he's thinking outside the box.
I will say that one thing that Trump should be doing that he hasn't done, and this is in the Senate's court right now, is we don't have a replacement for Sam Brownback. We don't have an ambassador at large for international religious freedom. That nomination has stalled in the Senate. It's a very important position that I think we really need to pressure the Senate to move forward so that someone can go to these countries and can put pressure on these leaders to act.
Yeah, Mark Walker has been nominated by the administration and has yet to have his hearing. There is more that can be done diplomatically. I also think that when you go to places like Nigeria and other places, Sudan, which is another just horrible situation there, that Christians, churches, communities could be aided by the State Department with training and equipment to protect themselves against some of these attacks. That was actually what I used to do when I was a contractor with the State Department. All right, I want to move on. Casey, I want to talk about one of the items we didn't get to cover in depth this week. And that was a decision by the U.S. Appeals Court regarding the freedom of pro-life groups to talk about abortion pill reversal. Now, this is quite significant because as we now have over 70% of abortions, or thereabouts, being performed through abortion pills, the abortion reversal pill has become a very significant tool for pro-life ministries. Give us the latest on it. Unpack what that court did.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In the aftermath of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the Democratic Party and the far left really has gone into overdrive on how to make abortion even more prevalent than ever, despite the overturning of Roe, which is something a lot of Christians prayed in for many, many years and celebrated when it happened. But as you pointed out, they just shifted strategy. Now it's all in on the abortion pill, and we have not seen some drop off in abortions because of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And so part of what they're doing is they're pushing the abortion pill. And another strategy is they're trying to shut down anyone who speaks out against the abortion pill. So in this case of in New York, this case that was decided at the federal appellate level, there was these pro-life centers that are telling women a simple message that if you take the abortion pill and to end your pregnancy and then you change your mind, there's a window of time where you can take progesterone and actually undo the abortion pill and save the life of your baby. And we know testimonies of many women who have done that, who had the child, and are so grateful that they made that decision. So what happened was Letitia James, who's kind of infamous now, New York Attorney General, she ran on going after President Trump and trying to prosecute him and followed through with that. Very partisan Attorney General, very liberal, has actually gone after these pro-life groups and sued them and said, you cannot tell women that if they take this progesterone, that it could save their baby. Yeah. If they want to save their baby, you can't tell them that message. This case, the court ruled, hey, you can't tell these pro-life groups what they can and can't tell women.
But, Suzanne, this is nothing new in terms of how the left is trying to silence these care pregnancy centers. Before, I mean, we've seen this, and they've gone to the Supreme Court before. We had California making, and in other states, blue states, making them post signs in their windows before. I mean, this is, the left can't compete, so they have to silence the voice of truth.
Well, what's also ironic is that they call themselves pro-choice, but they don't want to inform women of choices like this, that they can undo an abortion that they regret already. The fact that 70% of children can be saved by an abortion pill reversal is something that every woman should know as she goes in to have one of these procedures.
Right, right. It is. They do not want the facts out there. And what's ironic is that when they were making many of these care pregnancy centers post signs in their windows saying we are not a full-service medical clinic, they say, well, we just want people to know the truth. No, they don't. They only want them to know what they are selling, and that is death and abortions. We got about 6 minutes left, Suzanne. I want to talk a little bit about corporate wokeness. It's still out there. I know a lot of it has been exposed, and many corporations have moved away from it, but there's still some out there.
There is, and it's ironic because today we just got the news that Jaguar had fired its woke CEO, who completely rebranded the company in a direction that was wildly out of step with the American people. He was just fired. Earlier today, AT&T said, we're dropping DEI, we're moving away from it, and yet there's still some companies, and companies that would surprise people like Chick-fil-A, who are still embracing some of these horribly woke, controversial, unpopular policies. Thanks to a listener named Debbie, we appreciate the tip. She emailed us a post earlier today that a Chick-fil-A in Utah was celebrating the same-sex marriage of two guys on their official account, on their Facebook account, which was astonishing, but not so astonishing when you consider Chick-fil-A's sort of legacy over the last few years, which is a really checkered past of backing away from Christian organizations like the Salvation Army, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and then funneling that money instead to really controversial places like the SPLC, who we are no fan of, to drag queen story hours. Now, that was a few years ago, but as recently as 2023, they went ahead and hired a DEI vice president in their corporate hierarchy, which to me is a much bigger problem because we've seen all of these other companies back away. And yet in the last 2 years, a Christian organization who should should have never hired a DEI VP in the first place, who shouldn't be embracing those values, has refused to reassign that person and has instead allowed a culture where we see what's being posted in Utah to flourish in these local stores. It's very concerning to me. I really have a beef or chicken or whatever you want to call it with the fact that they have not gradually moved away from these things as other companies have.
Well, and what's, I mean, when you have companies like Target and others that have actually, well, you mentioned AT&T, Jaguar, they've all kind of backed away. But here you have a business that is still privately held, and it identifies as Christian in particular.
Right, and they're profiting off of the fact that they identify as Christian and then turn around and betray those values. Now, I do realize this was a local franchise. I realize some people really love their local operators. They know them. They're good Christian people who love the Lord. And what really needs to happen is these good people need to pressure headquarters to move away from these policies and social extremism that no one in America really supports anymore.
Well, the local stores cannot do what the headquarters does not allow. I mean, can you imagine a Chick-fil-A, a local operator opening on Sunday? I mean, they would say, no, you can't. We're closed on Sunday. Well, why are they celebrating same-sex marriage? I mean,
right. It's wild. And unfortunately, having that vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion gives these locations cover to do things like this and to step outside the boundaries of the beliefs and the ethics that the country has said it promotes. So really, they need to take a deep look at what they're doing in their executive offices and turn away from these things that are turning off the American people, especially as a Christian organization. It does not serve the Kathy legacy well.
I throw this out to both of you. It's a bit stunning to me when you see all of these other corporations that have no stated faith whatsoever. In fact, they're totally secular. They've been backing away from this, I guess, because they can see the winds of change that came in with the Trump administration. Why would Chick-fil-A be moving the other direction?
I think, I'll jump in here, Tony. I think for whatever reason, Christian leaders, they want to be nice. They want to be nice guys. They want to be liked. They want to be seen as loving and gentle. And I think this idea, you probably know this better than me, but this idea that Christians should be loving and kind has been twisted into this idea that Christians can never take an unpopular stand. And we see that all the time. And so I think it's, maybe it's fortuitous that you mentioned Hebrews 11 today, because we see that all these people in Hebrews 11, they came to a point where, like Noah in Hebrews 11, everyone around him said, what you're doing is crazy, but he took a stand and he made it in the hall of faith. And it comes a time when these Christian companies, they have to say, this is what we believe, if you like it or not. And I think people actually reward that. And now consumers are punishing the companies that are staying woke.
Yeah. So eat more beef, right?
The cows are right off on.
I mean, I think we have to stand for something. The Word of God stands for something, and we need to stand on that Word. Casey, Suzanne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, folks, we do need to stand for something, and we need to stand on the Word, and I invite you to join me in our journey through the Word so that we can stand on it. We know how to apply the Word to the world around us. It's very clear. It speaks with great clarity. We just need to know it, and then we need to obey it. And if you'd like to join us on this journey, text Bible to 67742. All right, until next time, I leave you with the words of the Apostle Paul found in Ephesians 6, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you've taken your stand, yes, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council. To support our efforts to advance faith, family, and freedom, please text GIVE to 67742. That's GIVE to 67742. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information, please visit TonyPerkins.com.